Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Work Like a Girl Wednesday. I'm your host, Krista Nepper, founder of Work Like a Girl. And today we're talking about the real reason change is scary. So, obviously, it's scary. Obviously, it's scary to everyone. But the thing is, if we can figure out the why, then we can start creating change. We can just notice what is happening, whether it's in our body or in our personal space, and we can detach from it. Oh, that's just that thing I do. Oh, I see that I'm being triggered right now. Oh, I have the tools. I can handle this. So let's start to figure out the why. And I want to talk to you about what is going on from a brain science perspective. And then we're going to talk about socialization as well. But we are having a nervous system reaction. So, what do I mean by that? So, whenever we have something that is fearful come up, and change is fearful, so it is a risk, and risk can bring about things that we don't always want. That's certainly what our brain thinks. So, here's what's going on, and here's why. Our brain is hardwired towards the negative. 60% of our thoughts are negative, and that is just an evolutionary holdover. So our ancestors that thought the rumbling in the bush was a cute little bunny instead of a rattlesnake, they didn't actually become our ancestors because they died. So having this negative perception as humans keeps us safe, meaning that it keeps us alive. But when we are here to do more than just stay alive, we want to survive and we want to have a phenomenal life in which we are happy and purposeful and passionate. That doesn't actually serve us well. And our brain has not changed in the thousands of years that humans have exist. So what does that mean and why does it matter? Well, what it means is that the same nervous system reaction that allows me to flee from a charging tiger is also the same reaction I have when I get a passive aggressive email from my boss. What happens is our amygdala is triggered. I'm sure you learned about that in ninth grade biology class, but just as a reminder, that's our lizard brain. So it's our fight, flight, or freeze center. That's one that's often left off because it's a little bit lower than the amygdala, but that is something that happens. It's a primitive instinct where we fight. So we, ward off the tiger if we're strong enough. We run from it. We, flee, or we freeze if we become so scared and we think maybe we'll be invisible in those types of cases. So we still react, I should say, because we're not actually thinking at all. Our, frontal lobe actually shuts down in order to help us survive. So that is the same reaction that we have whenever we face any type of change. And the thing that is added on to that is the way that women are socialized. And, when I start to say this, I'm sure it's going to become obvious to you, but women are taught to be safe. And it's interesting because there is a biological response when men take a risk, and this back to, prehistoric times is why the body works differently. But if men, as the hunters, are out in the field and instead of a deer crossing their path, it's a ginormous buck and it puts them in danger, what happens is their body gives them this shot of testosterone, which allows them to kind of move forward and charge. And that is in modern times why you see, there's a lot of talk, especially in Silicon Valley, about the bro culture. And that's one of the reasons that you see this is because manhood, as Joan Williams has said, has to be proven again and again and again. And then we have this biological response that supports that. Where women, on the other hand, the amygdala that I spoke of just a moment ago, that's more readily triggered in women. And also the anterior cingulate cortex, that's the worrywart center of our brain. It goes on more quickly and it stays on for longer. And the reason from that, from an evolutionary perspective, is that it was our job to keep everything safe and alive. So we are, simultaneously taking care of the children. We are taking care of the chickens. We're looking at the horizon to make sure that a coyote isn't on its way in. That's why we're able to have this diffused awareness, but then also we're a little bit more on guard. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing inferior about that. That's a fabulous trait to have. That adds a lot of value when you look at the workforce, and you can see that women can see what's coming down the road and they are aware of all the factors in the room rather than maybe just singularly focused on one. But if we are taught to be safe and we are taught not to take risks, maybe a piece of it is instinctual and most of it is societal in the way that we are raised, then it's going to be even scarier when we talk about change. So knowing that can make a difference, but what can we actually do about it? So a couple of things. So when we start to notice the reaction, that should be the first thing that tips us off and allows us to kind of add a stopgap to our routine. So when you feel fear in whatever form, we're talking specifically about change, but notice if it's change or if you feel fear in different ways in your body. Where do you feel it? It's interesting. We call emotions feelings because we physically feel them. And once we can be aware of the reaction that is starting in our body, then we can change our environment. We can, go to the bathroom, we can leave the room, we can start to breathe, we can implement some tools that will assist us with getting back to center, getting back to where it is that we actually want to be. And then the other thing that we can do once we start to notice, okay, this is how I normally react to change, or this is what I'm fearful, what actually comes up, the biggest game changer is to stop making assumptions and to ask some questions. So I'm afraid. Why am I afraid? What is going on? Well, I assume that if somebody was laid off, I'm going to get laid off too. And if I get laid off, then I'm going to lose my house and I'm going to end up homeless and alone under a bridge. So that's an assumption you made. Maybe you need to start asking some questions. What is the economic situation with the company I work for? Is there something that I should be doing, could be doing, or want to do? And you can do that with any part of your life. It doesn't necessarily need to be related to work, but that's my field. And so I give you that example. So ask questions rather than making assumptions. And that's not something that's always easy to implement right away. It's one of those things that is simple but not easy is the category I put that in. But start to notice, oh, I did that thing where I went all the way down the path to the end where I was homeless and alone under a bridge, rather than asking, hey, Bob, do you think I could get that to you by Friday instead of Thursday? It's really simple things like that that change the trajectory of the big picture. So I hope that this has been helpful. If you liked this video, please feel free to share it with a friend. You can subscribe below, and we will see you next week for more Work Like a Girl Wednesday.